John Mills was another longtime friend who shared enough experiences with Patti for several lifetimes. He wrote, "I hope the group that only had the pleasure of knowing Patti for 10 or 15 years will come away knowing the Patti that you and I did. The Patti who raced lobsters in Buzzards Bay. The Patti who would crash through the chain of lakes singing pirate songs and laugh every time someone went flying off the bow of Scuffy. The Patti who barricaded Sheridan Road her freshman year at Northwestern. The Patti who was the first cocktail waitress in the history of Evanston, Illinois. The Patti with the cat who answered the phone. The Patti who, along with Dusty, cooked all those corned beefs for countless St. Patrick's Day parties on Buckingham, and who brought the Irish boys into our lives. An episode that Mills swears had Buckingham under police surveillance for 7 years. It might still be, for all we know. There were dichotomies in Patti's personality and in her life. Who else do you know who could be sitting in a boardroom with a corporate CEO one day, and the next morning be cavorting with assorted puppeteers and gypsies and fairies and elves and mud eaters, and not seem particularly out of place in either scenario. When Dottie Mack and Patterson and I first went into her apartment after all this happened, I found Patti's wallet, and tucked inside there were 3 pieces of paper folded up. I opened up the first one, and it was a list of gemstones and what they all meant spiritually. The second one was a list of scents and aromas and what they were all supposed to mean for us. I carefully unfolded the third piece of paper, and it was a gravy recipe. It was the first genuine laugh I had that week. I thought, this is who Patti was, someone whose mind was always reaching for the helping spirits, but whose feet were firmly planted on the ground. And you can imagine the other laugh I got a few days later when Janet Cohen, in writing about the absolute spiritual soul of Patti, said, "I will miss her readings, her talent, her one-of-a-kind laugh, and her kick-ass mashed potatoes and gravy." Many people remember that one-of-a-kind laugh, but remember too that, to quote Dorothy Parker, she cries at card tricks. If Bill Brown couldn't get her to cry at least 3 times in one of his productions, it wasn't a success. But he always succeeded, always. Another dichotomy, Patti was she always considered herself to be one of the boys, and truth be told, the boys often thought of her that way too. And yet it was Patti and Judith who tirelessly worked to whip Chicago women in publishing into shape. It was Patti who organized periodic girl nights here in Chicago. It was Patti who would never miss her yearly retreat to Camp Creek in Texas with Martha and Karen and Miss Ellen and all those fascinating women. Few people thought of Patti as particularly maternal. Her relationship with children was unconventional. But if you knew how she tracked every year of Tricia's life as she grew into womanhood, if you read the spider stories she read for Savannah, if you witnessed the fascination and occasional bewilderment on the faces of Sam and Molly as she told them tales of the constellations or the turning of the autumn leaves, you'd see an old soul who had found her own way to communicate with the young. I don't know about you, but I find that a lot of young people these days don't have much time for or interest in those of us over 50. But it wasn't so with Patti. They fed off her energy. Ask Quentin, who's behind the camera over there. Or ask Carolyn Angel, who was a young intern at Metro Stage, who just soaked up Patti's enthusiasm for theater, for Georges Sand, for Flaubert. She introduced her to Flaubert, God help her. Ask Jen Price, who was our young set designer for Becoming George. She wrote, "In the short time I knew her, she taught me to aspire to be a better artist, a better person, and possibly most importantly to raise a little hell. As a young artist and a young woman in the theater, Patti was such an inspiration to me. She is what I wanted to be when I grew up. I'm pretty sure if she heard me say this, she would laugh, maybe roll her eyes, and hug me." Now, on the subject of Patti's hugs, I want to read you what Sherry Coons wrote, because it's pretty wonderful. She wrote, "I find myself thinking about her hugs quite often these days. Of course I miss her brilliance, her passion for community building, the pleasure of our friendship, but those bone-crushing hugs, can I ever forget what it felt like to be enveloped in one of them? They were actually a little disturbing to me early in our friendship. She would practically seize me every time I saw her. She wasn't the kind of person you imagine giving bear hugs, but that's really the best description of them. They were like sinewy bear hugs. The grasp was astonishing for someone so slight. She would grab me, squeeze hard, and hang on for dear life. Always a good 5 seconds past my comfort level. I tried the standard 4 little pats on the back to indicate that it was time for me. I tried starting a conversation while still in the midst of it. Maybe it would distract her into an early dismount. This never worked, because I was completely breathless from having the air squeezed out of me by the fragile force of nature known as Patti McKenny. Sometime during the first year of our friendship, I confided in another friend that I was a little concerned about these hugs. I was afraid they might indicate that Patti had special feelings for me that I didn't return. But my friend told me she'd had the same hugs from Patti. Everybody did. Nothing to worry about. That was just the way Patti hugged. I was relieved and started to relax into them. It was easier if you relaxed. Kind of like getting a full-body mammogram. I received one of those strange and wonderful hugs every time I saw her. At meetings at Chicago Musical Theater Works, or the Dramatists Guild, or if we were just getting together for coffee or dinner or a show. And once I got used to them, I even looked forward to them, as much as I looked forward to our conversations. Patti was such a brilliant communicator with words. It seemed strange to remember her for something so completely beyond words. And yet, I'm finding that's what I miss the most right now. Her physical presence, the sound of her voice, her hugs. If Patti McKenny hugged you, you knew you'd been hugged.